That's my presentation. Thanks for coming. No, I'm just kidding. Can you imagine if I did that? You just came for a bio. So I'm going to start out with a video. It's an oldie but goodie.
Becoming quite a celebrity.
When you walk out of the shadows, quietly walk out of the dark, and strike.
What did you do?
It was never supposed to be that many banks. The authentication and authorization vulnerabilities in the APIs were only in a handful of them. The problem is they outsourced the development and the company reused that same code across 300 other banks. What was I supposed to do?
Okay, so we call everyone and explain what happened.
What do you think I'm doing on October 26th? Money 2020 invited me as their keynote speaker. I'll tell the world on stage how I hacked these banks to their APIs. It's time. So this was a video that played at Money 2020 that I created where I hacked 55 banks in less than a week. And the original target list of banks was only supposed to be 55. And it turned out that one of the banks outsourced their development for their APIs to a company that develops APIs and mobile apps for banks. And it turned out that they rinsed and reused that same vulnerable code across all 300 of their clients. So the 55 bank target list ended up becoming 355 banks that I hacked in less than 7 days. So what I'm going to be talking about in today's keynote is the last 5 years of API hacking that I'm calling Princess of Thieves. I think you did a pretty good bio for me, so there's really not much to say here other than, I started hacking when I was 13. I was arrested for hacking into a government network at 17, and then the charges were dropped because the DA didn't want to touch the charges because they interrogated me without my parents there. So I got off on a technicality. So my guardian angel was with me that day. And then I went to go work for the U.S. intelligence community in cyber warfare, supporting counterinsurgency operations in Afghanistan and Iraq. Trained in CQC, CQB, first woman to go through private SEER training, and trained sniper, and traded in my keyboard for an M4. I then went on to start and sell 2 cybersecurity companies. I'm a published author. For those of you who are interested, my book is available on Amazon. I walk you through actually hacking connected cars, which I'm going to talk about today, where I was able to take remote control of any law enforcement vehicle on the road as long as you knew the VIN number. So I'll talk about that today. I'm also a Hollywood director and movie producer, and my wife Mel is here with me. She's my executive producer as well. So we've actually produced 7 TV series now. We're in the process of starting a new feature film, and all of our stuff is cyber genre entertainment. We actually own a coffee company as well. So, yeah, that's weird. For those of you who are interested, you can buy our coffee on Amazon as well. We own multiple companies, including an events company where we put on annual cybersecurity conferences, Night Studios, which is our Hollywood production company, our publishing company, as well as our coffee company, and we started a venture capital fund to invest in cybersecurity startups. What I'm going to talk about today is pretty much all of the research that you guys and girls can all go and download today. These are all of the papers with the evidence and the screenshots of what I'm going to talk about. So because of some of the findings, like hacking 55 banks in less than a week or hacking millions of patient records sounds so crazy and unbelievable, I've included screenshots in today's presentation. All those screenshots are in those papers. You can all download them for free. I think some of the vendors do gate it, so you might have to provide an email address, use a fake one, whatever. But you can go download them for free. So here's the interesting little tidbit that I found out about and wasn't told. 2 congressmen actually held that report, Playing with Fire, up on Capitol Hill as a reason for why things need to change in healthcare cybersecurity. That actually affected public policy. So when it was released, the Office of Inspector General for Health and Human Services contacted me because I was able to hack FHIR APIs, which gave me access to millions of patient records on millions of Americans. So I'm going to talk about that today. And if any of you are interested in getting more details, I would just refer to the white paper. So this is my timeline of hacking APIs. So over the last 5 years, I first started out with hacking banks, wanted to figure out if I could rob banks from my living room with my pajamas on. And then moved on to mobile health APIs. During the pandemic, there was a huge influx of mHealth apps where you could visit your doctor and talk to your doctor through your mobile phone. That sparked intrigue for me as a hacker, knowing that all of our patient data is out there on these APIs. And I wanted to know how well they were being secured. Then I moved on to hacking law enforcement vehicles. So this was interesting. I can't get into too many details on this, but basically a senior official with the intelligence community contacted me. It turned out that the drug cartels were hacking into law enforcement vehicles to find out where they were being parked at night so they could kill the families of the law enforcement officers. And they wanted to figure out how they were doing it. So I worked with law enforcement for about a year, and I found out not only was it possible to do it without authentication or authorization, but you could also remotely lock and unlock the doors and remotely start and stop the engines of any FBI, NSA, DOD, cop, whatever law enforcement vehicle you wanted, as long as you knew the VIN. And we all know how top secret VIN numbers are. This is going to be a really interesting presentation. Hopefully you had your coffee. I'm also going to go into my data on how I hack cryptocurrency exchanges. So pretty much everything in the world today is powered by APIs. It's the plumbing of pretty much everything. I'll try and demystify all of this to you for those of you who have no idea what an API is. I'm going to be explaining a lot of this in better detail. So this is my favorite analogy for an API. Think of APIs as kind of like the electrical socket in your house, right? So it doesn't care what you plug into it. It'll provide you electricity as long as it can fit in those 2 little holes. You can plug it in, and the power company will provide you electricity. This is pretty much how an API works. It really doesn't care what's at the other end that's requesting the data. It's going to serve it to you. Some people have heard the... Sorry, can you get me some water? Thanks. I swear I don't have COVID. I'm just going to dry throat. Okay, so that's pretty much what an API is. It basically requests all of the, provides you all of the data that you're requesting as an API client. So I'm going to be talking about broken object level authorization today, or BOLA. For those of you who are familiar with this, it used to be called IDOR, or Insecure Direct Object Reference. A lot of the vulnerabilities that I'm going to talk about today in hacking these banks, I did blur out a lot of the vulnerabilities because they're still vulnerable. It's been 3 or 4 years now, and some of the vendors have not fixed these vulnerabilities. So anyway, BOLA. I love the analogy for this that I came up with. So the way BOLA works is, the analogy is, if I were to pull my car up to a hotel to a valet, right? I come up right behind a Ferrari, and I'm in a Hyundai. And I'm like, man, I sure would like to take home that Ferrari. I see that the valet gives the owner of that Ferrari the number 18. And then the valet gives me a ticket with the number 17. Thanks. And then I take that 17 back, and I use a Sharpie, and I change that 7 to an 8. That's basically an example of a BOLA vulnerability. Is I'm authenticated, I have a ticket, and I bring it back to the valet, and I drive home that Ferrari, right? That Ferrari doesn't belong to me, but I'm producing a ticket that's got the number 18 in it. That's basically a BOLA vulnerability. I'm authenticated, I'm supposed to be there, I'm allowed to be there, I have a ticket, but that's not my Ferrari, all right? That's what a BOLA vulnerability is. In the terms of OAuth, tokens. I have a token. I've been issued a token. The API is like, oh, Alyssa's been authenticated. She's got a token. So she's requesting data. Let's give it to her. That's basically Ebola. I'm authenticated, but I'm not authorized. All right, let's talk about my kill chain. So I'm going to have references to tools that all of you can download it for free today that I use in hacking APIs. So first I do reconnaissance. This is basically fuzzing and content discovery. You can use tools like Kite Runner and Wrestler. Those are my two favorite. You can go download those from GitHub. Those are free. Vulnerability analysis, the most common that I use are BOLA, or broken authentication and mass assignment. Yes, there was an API that logged into, and using my API client, I found out that the API gave me all of the patient records in the database just by logging in. That's an example of mass assignment. I'll show you that later. But OWASP API Security Top 10, I am a contributor to the new OWASP API Security Top 10 2023 that just came out. So I contributed several vulnerabilities to that as well. Okay, this is my process for hacking APIs. To me, hacking is nothing more than sending stimulus to an application that the developer didn't expect to receive. That's all hacking is, okay? So given that definition, believe it or not, the first thing that I do when I'm hacking an API is I just use the app. I get a spreadsheet out, and I click every button in the app, and I document the request and the response. It gives me an idea of what the developer expected me to do with the app, right? If you think about it, it's kind of like social engineering the API. I'm trying to figure out how it works. So for those of you who want to take notes and learn how do I hack APIs like Alissa Knight, that would be it. Just use it. Like, use it. That's all you're really doing is trying to figure out how it works. Once I figure out how it works, I will then modify or manipulate those requests using an API client. This is where I shut the mobile app down or the web app down, and I send my own API requests using a free client. I like to use Postman. I use Burp Suite as well. Postman is a great API client. There's free ones. You don't have to go out there and buy anything. You don't have to go home and tweet, Alyssa said I have to buy all this stuff. It's free. You can go download it. I basically just document all the API requests. I look for hard-coded URIs and tokens. There's a free tool that all of you can go download today called MobSF, or Mobile Security Framework. What it does is it allows you to actually drag and drop APK files, even iOS apps, into the UI, and it will actually take that APK file or that package off of the Android device, and it will deconstruct it and reverse it back to the original source code. And you can actually see all the developers' notes, all of the hard-coded usernames and passwords. Yes, that is still a thing. I swear to God, it is still 2023. And developers are still doing that. A lot of the screenshots you'll see today, believe it or not, will contain hard-coded usernames and passwords in the apps. Hard-coded API secrets like keys and tokens. So that's definitely a process that I go through, is making sure I actually look at the code, because a lot of the times they don't even really need to look for these, super 31337 elite vulnerabilities. I can just go into the app and find hard-coded secrets in there. When I'm using a web API, when I'm targeting a web API, is a little bit of different process than using like MobSF and looking at the mobile app, because it's a web API, right? So the neat thing about Burp Suite is it has a built-in Chromium browser where it'll actually channel all of the requests and the responses through Burp Suite. And I'm probably one of the laziest hackers you'll ever meet. So if I can save time, I will do that. That's what I love about Burp Suite, is you don't have to mess with proxies. You don't have to change proxy configurations in your operating system. You can just use Chromium built into Burp Suite, and it shows you all the traffic. Now, what I do once I capture those API requests and those responses, what do? I paste them into a spreadsheet. And then I've got all the requests, and then I send them with my API client, trying to do something that the developer didn't expect to receive. You've heard the term man-in-the-middle attack. I don't like that term. I like to call it woman-in-the-middle attack. Uh, a lot of the attacks that you'll see that I ran today are woman in the middle attacks. So it's basically where I'll sit there in the middle of the communication and listen. So I'll start the mobile app. I'll intercept the traffic using a tool like Midem Proxy or Burp Suite, and I listen and I look at the requests and I forward them on, but I manipulate them in transit. Now, some of you are like, Alissa, that's not possible. It's encrypted. It's TLS. Well, if you send your own certificate to both sides of the conversation, you can decrypt it. So it really doesn't matter if it's TLS. It doesn't matter if it's encrypted. As long as you have the keys, you can decrypt that traffic. And it helps me understand how the API works. Yes, I am a new Ubuntu user. A lot of you are probably like, why don't you use Kali? That's so fast. I like to build my own systems. The thing about Kali, I'm not hating on Kali. I actually love OffSec. I'm keynoting at their conference soon. But I love Kali. But here's the thing. I like to build my own boxes because I want to install the libraries. I want to know what versions of libraries on there. All of you, I'm sure a lot of you know what happens when you install 2 different versions of a library on Linux. I want to know what's there. I want to know that I'm the one who built it. So I also will use an Android tablet. Now, some of you are like, Alissa, how do you get those Android apps off that tablet? There's a great tool in the Google Play Store called APK Extractor, and it will actually allow you to pull the Android app off of the Android device. So what did I do? I downloaded 55 mobile banking apps and cryptocurrency exchange apps onto my Android, and I extracted them, and then I put them on my workstation for fun and profit. So that's all I did was APK Extractor. Burp Suite Pro, that's what I use. You can use the free community edition. I just bought it because I want to support Portswigger. Postman, Midem Proxy, and then Kite Runner. Okay. You ready for the fun stuff? The screenshots? All right. So this is a real screenshot of all of the keys and tokens of me trying to figure out how do you squish over 8,000 hard-coded keys and tokens for mobile apps into a PowerPoint. I have no idea. I'm still trying to figure that out. But you will see the keys and tokens here. You'll see some usernames and passwords. You'll see some Firebase fun stuff for those of you who are familiar with Google Firebase. There's all kinds of fun goodies in there. And here's more. This, I know you guys and girls probably can't see, but basically this is what I do, is I just open up Excel and I copy and paste all of my findings into an Excel spreadsheet. Keys, tokens, all of the requests, so I can document. That's the biggest recommendation I can give all of you. If any of you are pen testers, is that Corey? What's up, man? What's up, boy? That's my man. Thanks for coming. So I mean, that's the best advice I can give any of you who are pen testers is document everything as you go, right? I'm 45. Yeah, this is purple hair dye. This is all gray. I'm old. My memory isn't like what it used to be. So I just document everything because I can't remember what I did. It also lets me, I'll even store screenshots in the cells. Like, like, oh, wait, we need to go buy this really expensive pen testing documentation app. And no, just Excel. This is a fun one. So during Christmas, a bank asked me to try and hack their APIs. I did. And I was able to change the PIN code of any bank customer in the entire bank for their ATM debit PIN card and transfer money in and out of accounts using the APIs. And this is a screenshot of that where you can see I'm specifying the card number, and I can specify any PIN code I want. The neat thing about this is I didn't even need to be authenticated. Originally authenticated because I got my hands on an actual authentication credential, but ended up commenting it out and just sending the API request, and the API was executing it. So you wouldn't believe it's 2023 and I can still communicate with APIs without even authenticating. And as long as you know the correct syntax of the API request that it's expecting, A lot of these APIs that you'll see today executed them. Several of them cryptocurrency exchanges, one of which I'm sure you can use your imagination. I won't mention the name of it. Doesn't exist anymore. I swear to God, that wasn't me. Yeah, why ransom when you can just take the Bitcoin yourself? All right, so here's the fun thing. This is the first time I'm presenting these particular slides. So I'm pretty sure they fixed a lot of these. The last time I checked, they were fixed except one or two of them, but the automaker is Ford. So this is the first time I'm talking about this research. This affected every Ford on the road. So as long as you knew, I picked on law enforcement just because it was sexier and cool than just to say, Ford. But, if you get arrested and you're in the back seat and you need me to unlock the car door because you want to jump out, just give me a call and make me your first call. This affected every single law enforcement vehicle. In the United States, pretty much every law enforcement agency, including the intelligence community, uses Ford. Ford is a big supplier of vehicles for fleets and law enforcement. So this affected Secret Service. This affected, when I presented these findings, pretty much every three-letter agency was in the audience. This is every single API request for controlling Fords through their APIs. So what happened was I was able to add any car, any Ford to my virtual garage. This is the API request to do that, including being able to approve the request on behalf of the driver. Since I know Corey's here, I'll pick on him. So let's say I find out that Corey's got a Ford. What I found out with their APIs was that I could add Corey's Ford to my virtual garage in the Ford mobile app through the API, and then I could approve it on behalf of Corey. It was the weirdest thing. I kid you not, I probably spent a year and a half just understanding all of the intricacies of the API. So I could send the request on behalf of Corey, and then I could also approve it on behalf of Corey. Obviously, the security there is that Corey should be the one to approve it, not me. But once I added his car to my virtual garage, I could then start the engine, stop the engine, and this could be done anywhere. And I have a video that I've made that I'm going to show you, but it's super cool. So this is a screenshot of another bank. I'm sorry, this is the cars. So I found out, I couldn't figure out how to unlock the doors. You could use the put command in using this string that you see in the screenshot, and I couldn't figure out how to unlock the doors, and then I figured out that it was using the delete verb. So if you change put to delete, and delete the lock API request, and then unlock the doors. And this was any VIN. I actually, I won't admit this outside of this room, but in the United States, we have these used car websites where they actually give you the VIN on the website. So I went to the website, and I grabbed one of the VINs off of a used car from that lot, of the used car lot, and I plugged it into the API to see if it would work, and it worked. So it was any Ford, no matter where it was in the world, as long as it was communicating with APIs on Ford's backend. This is another, this was where the really dangerous stuff came in. As long as you knew a VIN number, you didn't even need to supply any authentication credentials. So what happened was I found out how the cartels were finding out where these cars were being parked at night. You could actually get GPS and previous trip data for that particular VIN from the APIs to find out where the cars were parked, where they'd been, all without authentication. You could just send these API requests and get this data from the cars, including identifying whether or not the car was a police vehicle. In this particular screenshot, you can see I remotely, for those of you who aren't aware, HTTP 200 response means success. So this is me sending a door lock command to lock the vehicle, and then you can see the API responded with the 200 success. unlocking the doors, you can see I changed the verb to delete. And then, what is this? Oh, so the way VINs work is as long as you know one VIN, you can just cycle through the entire fleet by incrementing it by one number. So I had quite a lot of fun with fleet for this police department. So basically I just kept cycling through all the VINs and getting all the data on each car, including whether or not it was law enforcement. And here's the video to prove all of this is true. So this is me when I had long hair. I think the mohawk's better. I'm on the lot of the police station, but I don't have to be there. Obviously, I was there to coordinate with the fleet commander to make sure that we were just messing with the cars. I did not do that, I swear. That was not me. So here I'm demonstrating to the police force that this was remotely possible. So that was me with my laptop communicating with the API. You can't actually put it in gear. You can only start and stop the engine. But we did find out that even without the key, you could remotely stop it. So there's me unlocking the doors. And then this guy over there is realizing that he's got a lot of work ahead of him because of me. So he's got alcohol in his hand, trying to figure out, and then me locking it. So obviously for law enforcement, if you can remotely unlock a door, that's not good. And this is me being stupid, just kind of celebrating this. So that was the law enforcement car research. Yay! Okay, so let's talk about the healthcare research. So this was the fire healthcare APIs research that I did. For those of you who aren't aware of what fire is, FHIR. So in the US, if you go to a hospital and you break your foot, let's say Corey broke his foot. He goes to one hospital. It's gonna go all day, man. It's gonna go all day. And Corey decides that he's going to go to a checkup, but he's going to go to a different hospital. Those two hospitals don't share patient data, right? This isn't just a US thing, this is a global thing, right? Just healthcare companies don't share your data. Have you ever seen a doctor and they said, hey, go have your records faxed over here? Yeah, some even use fax machines still. So FHIR is supposed to fix that. Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources is supposed to address this challenge where healthcare agencies, payers, and providers can actually share data. It's a mandate, a federal mandate in the US that all healthcare providers and payers have to make your patient data available via APIs. And you can trust the US government for security. So I was like, man, this is fun. I bet there's a lot of stuff to play with FHIR. So a lot of the advocates for the FHIR research said that this wasn't possible. And I love it when people say something's unhackable. So this is a result of that research. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a lot of the evidence that I collected in this research. This is just, probably can't see that very well, but this is Postman, where I'm actually downloading patient data from these APIs. Now, this one's funny. I had actually discovered that when logging into one of the APIs, just logging in, the API decided it would be a good idea to provide me all of the patient records in the database. So just logging in. So what the developer did was he or she coded the mobile app to filter out just my patient data and sent everything else. And I asked the developer, why did you do this? And the developer said, because it's for forward compatibility. So in the future, if I need to include any additional fields in the patient records, I'm sending everything. So I just need to filter that out in the app. And I said, that's not smart. He said, well, how did you see all the records I sent over? And I said, I used Postman. He's like, oh, you weren't using the app because the app's filtering out just your records. I said, I can use something other than the app you made. And so this was probably the most comical thing. Here's a screenshot of one of the patients, just to confirm, or actually it was a doctor. So there were doctors in these records as well. So you can see the individual's name on the right-hand side in Postman. And then here I actually Googled the doctor and found it was exactly he was exactly at the same address that was in the database to prove the data was real. This is me accessing other patient records. So this is a screenshot of all the patient data that I was able to grab from the system. The interesting thing here is this is Ebola. So for those of you who don't know what object IDs are, so Ebola is quite simply me logging in and then finding out that the API request called out, hey, get/patient/ID 1001. And so what I did was I went into Postman. I said, well, what happens if I change this to patient ID 1002, 1003? Well, it worked. So because of a lack of scopes, and other security, I was able to view other records. How am I on time? Am I way over? 2 minutes. All right, here we go. Hard-coded API keys and tokens. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so this is a screenshot of all the hard-coded API keys and tokens in those mobile apps. This is a screenshot of actual pathology reports. So the neat thing about Postman is you can actually grab PDFs and then save it to your drive. So this is a screenshot of an actual pathology report for a patient. After I'd saved it to my drive and then took a screenshot of it. This is Burp Suite, more redacted patient data. This is all of the news that the fire research actually was able to get exposure with. So you can see Health and Human Services there. There was a Forbes article written. And what I learned from 5 years of hacking APIs. Despite it being 2023, developers are still not authorizing authenticated API requests. It is a systemic issue. Organizations are not maintaining asset catalogs of their APIs. Guess what? You can't protect what you don't know you have. So find an API security solution that will give you an API catalog of everything that's out there, and most importantly, what kind of data it's serving. There's still no context in security. Organizations are still using WAFs to secure their APIs. A lot of the victim organizations that I hit thought they were secure because they were using WAFs. I believe, some of you may key my car for saying this and disagree, but I believe that thinking you're secure is a lot more dangerous than no security at all, because you have this false sense of security. So make sure you're using the right tool for the job. Many companies are transferring their risk. The bank that I hacked that outsourced their security, the development of their APIs, which resulted in 300 other API hacks, it turns out that they were transferring their risk. Just please understand, just because you're transferring your risk, meaning that you're having another company develop your API security, if it gets hacked, it's not their logo that's going to be in the news, it's yours. So forget the SOC 2 Type 2 compliance or ISO 27001. They must be secure if there's SOC 2. Pen test the stuff they give you. What to do? Know what's talking to your APIs, know how many and where your APIs are facing, know what kind of data your APIs are serving, hack yourself. Don't hard code sensitive data in your apps, that's a given. Authenticate and authorize, test and retest, and there's my contact info. You survived my keynote. Thank you so much, everyone. If you scan the barcode, thank you. If you scan the barcode, it will give you my cell phone number. So if you want to stalk me, you can. Those are my social media connections as well. Everyone have a blessed day. Thank you.
If anybody wants to have a questions, we have 3 more minutes.
Wash your cars. Sure, yep.
So my question is about the Ford cars, right? So you were able to hack the car. How was there internet connectivity with the Ford cars? How did that happen? And the second question is, what happened to that company that was providing 300 banks the service? What happened to them afterwards?
Good question. So So with Ford, when you buy a Ford vehicle, and for some reason, even with law enforcement, they were shipping it with the Ford modem on, with the connectivity. So car makers are updating their cars and applying updates to your vehicle over OTA, over the air. And what OTA does is it allows the car to basically communicate back and forth with the back-end car makers' APIs and servers. And so they use OTA to update the cars, and that's on by default for 2 years when you buy a Ford. After 2 years, it still maintains a connection, but you have to pay for all the additional services like Wi-Fi in your car and stuff. With the bank that outsourced to their development, I ended up on a phone call with the CEO and the developers of that bank, and they had to fix the code in all 300 banks' APIs. The interesting thing is in the Money 2020 keynote where I showed you the video, those banks were in the audience, and it was a really difficult time, a challenging time for that company, because they had to work to correct and secure so many APIs after that happened.
When you're first poking around in an app, do you ever use any fuzzers, or do you just do it all by hand?
Great question. Yes, I do use a lot of fuzzing. For me, I just really want to understand how the API is going to respond to any stimulus, whether I generate or whether or not I use a tool. So some of the tools I mentioned are up there, but yeah, fuzzing is a necessary, critical first step. So yeah, I would recommend that to all of you. If you're going to get into API pen testing, check out fuzzers, know how to use fuzzers, because they're very powerful tools necessary in your tool set.
How responsive have you found automakers to their vehicles being like very, very insecure?
So responsive. They love me. I'm not allowed to go in certain automakers' car dealerships anymore. The response. So here's okay. So I will say that one of the automakers, which starts with an F and ends with Ord, wanted me to give them all the details and how to fix it, and they wanted me to do it for free. I told them I wasn't going to do it for free, that they would have to pay me a consulting fee, because I did that stuff for law enforcement for free, to support our men and women in blue, and asked them to just bring me on as a consultant to help them, and they refused to do it because they didn't want to pay. So the response hasn't been great. A lot of people think that they're impervious to being hacked because they're not driving around in a Tesla. That's not true. Any car made after 2001 is connected. So the first connectivity was GM OnStar. So a lot of cars are connected. You're driving around in a computer network on wheels, even if you're not in a Tesla.